Hello there, and welcome to Leveling Up Education. Today we have a special guest to interview, which is Cassidy. And I've known Cassidy for a long time, to the point where we actually lived together for 3 weeks, and we are both part of the same amazing community. And Cassidy is one of the most vibrant people that I know, and she's one of the persons that always wants to give and kind of connect with people and really help others out. And she's also passionate about education. But I think after all, she can introduce herself the best. So Cassidy, why don't you take it away?
My name's Cassidy. I am the person that creates the most vibrant version of yourself. I'm the person that gives you the tools, the knowledge, the inspiration to be able to do that, or just one of the people that helps you get to that point. And the reason that I was able to get to this point was because I went through a health and life crisis, and I got to where I was, and life taught me so much. And it told me to teach everybody I could. So now I am a holistic health expert. I am an author of the book, The Vibrancy Codes, A Guide to Vibrant Health and Vitality, which became #1 new release in holistic medicine and energy healing on Amazon. And I'm also an international keynote speaker. So I'm very much an educator in this. I love teaching about it. And I'm just so excited to just continue to talk about it with you and everybody who's listening.
Amazing. So most of our audience is teachers who are currently kind of in high school or middle school, or general educators who really want to prepare their students for the future. So to kind of give them a reference, where did you go to school, and kind of how did you experience this whole school life, and how satisfied were you with your educational experience?
So I am from the US. I live in the Boston area, so I've always been in Massachusetts. I've gone to school all the way through in Massachusetts, and I went to university. I went to University of Massachusetts, Amherst, and pretty much all in the Boston area. We have very good education here. We probably have the best education in our country. This is where education started. And it still has a lot of issues. And it still has a lot of things that I wish I would have learned. I actually studied neuroscience in undergrad, and I learned so much. I absolutely love school. I'm if anyone knows Strength Finders, I'm an achiever. I love achieving things. I love getting that grade, or getting that thing, that golden star, whatever I can do to continue to achieve something. I love doing that. And so that was very helpful for me. But when I came into life, I realized a lot of these things that I learned, yes, they're helping in what I'm doing now. I learned a lot about behavioral change, the neurological basis of a lot of the work that I'm doing now. But I didn't learn about the work that I'm doing now until I had to go through life. I didn't learn about how to have emotional intelligence. I didn't learn about how to listen to my body and really hear what it was telling me. I didn't learn how to have healthy dynamics in my relationships. And I wish that education had brought me some of that. That's why I'm so passionate about educating in this way, about coaching, about writing books, about speaking, is because I wish that I was educated on this at a younger age. I wish that this was taught in schools. I wish we were taught not algebra, but how to have a healthy life, how to feel fulfilled in every single moment. Vibrancy for me, when I went through the school of life, was a health that I could feel in every single one of my cells. It was a health that made me feel alive. It was a health that made me feel connected to myself and other people. I wanted to learn how to have self-love. In school, I felt so insecure. It was breeding of competition and breeding of separateness. Thinking about, how we are in school, you take tests and you do all these things. Real life is collaboration. Real life is teamwork. Real life is critical thinking. It's not saying what you learned on a screen. We can look that up on Google. So what I've learned from the education system, I've learned a lot. And I'm grateful for it. I'm very grateful for the education that I had, very grateful for the place that I was able to have it, especially being one of the best in the country. And still, I find that there's a lot that's missing. And a lot that I felt was missing, which is why I'm so passionate about teaching it in the way that I do and having my clients and really bringing these messages forward, because I think that these should have been already been taught in schools, but we got to do it now. So this is why I'm so passionate about what I do. And you're hitting a nail on the head with the education piece.
Yeah, like for sure. And you mentioned something that I think we can double down on a little bit more on different things that we're missing. Because I also spent 1 year in the American system. Like I went to the high school in Joplin, Missouri. So it wasn't Boston, but it was like right in the middle. And the experiences I made there was that compared to the German education system, you guys in America, and like I cannot speak for the whole country, but I
Mhm.
feel like to a degree, it will be more similar within like the US than compared to Germany. And something
Yeah.
that I did enjoy was that you had like this whole school spirit. So you had the connectedness,
Hmm.
and you were able to kind of go into different specializations. I remember there was a course that you could take on like 3D printing, which is just insane if you think about it, compared to like Germany. We are still struggling with Wi-Fi in some schools, and there we all had a MacBook. But you still say there are like certain subjects missing that would be crucial for just be living not only a healthy life, but also just being prepared for the future. Because I also felt like after graduating school, um, like the things that I learned weren't really all that relevant in the job that I later took. To kind of go a little bit deeper and like explore this, I think what we can do is specifically look at the body, the mind, and the soul. And I think mostly within school, people focus a lot on the mind. And you already mentioned this competitiveness. So I feel like you were quite competitive in school, and you like always wanted to have like the best grades. So can you kind of like, I don't know, describe a little bit on how you were as a student?
Oh yeah. I mean, I was a student that was, sitting at the front of the class, even if my friends were sitting in the back, and I didn't care because I wanted to be in the front. I always had my hand up the second that, the teachers pet everything that I could do to make sure that I was not only just learning, because I was very, very deeply grateful and it had the wherewithal and knowledge that what I was getting was probably better than a lot of people in the country. I had the wherewithal that we had resources, teachers, and and information that was not available in other schools. So I knew, like, there was a part of me that knew that, and I wanted to I wanted to soak in every single bit I could and get every value out of everything that I possibly was possible in that moment. And I
You were a
also
much better student than I was.
it didn't start off that way. It didn't start off that way. It did end up becoming that way. I actually was on an IEP for a really long time when I was younger,
What does
which,
IAP mean? Like, especially for
yes,
people from Europe that may not be familiar.
individualized education program. So
Okay.
it means like basically special education. When I had trouble with short-term memory, I had trouble with writing, I had, like they do the IQ test, like there's the things that are kind of dangerous and you're not making it or whatever. And so I also felt like I had something to prove. So I had to, get to a point where I was beyond excelling any of the things that they would give me, right? And I I found that it was a very uh, interesting shift as I started to feel that I could do it, because I was finding ways that I could learn. Because back when I wasn't utilizing ways that helped me learn. But when I finally learned how I learned, that's when things started to really pick up.
Hmm.
And it changed it all for me.
So that happened during high school on your side, or when did you kind of like learn how to learn? Because for me, that happened only in like in college, essentially.
Yeah, I would say it happened in high school. And that's where I created very good, I mean, the study habits that I created in my life are why I'm able to have my own business and why I'm able to, do. to write a book, to publish a book, to do all of these things is because I laid foundations of good study habits. Now, it doesn't mean that you had to have good study habits in high school to be, successful or to follow your dreams or whatever. But that in itself was probably more helpful than anything else was my actual how I utilized school, not what I learned in it, if that makes sense.
So you kind of mentioned that it seemed like you were very focused on something specific. Like, did you always know that you wanted to start your own business, or what was the reason for you to trying to excel at school?
What's really funny is I actually really, really, really was passionate about going to medical school. I I knew that the medical system was broken. I already kind of knew that. And I wanted to go in and I wanted to change it. And in my journey after college, I had graduated top 10% of my class. I had everything on my resume that I needed, and I was doing my applications to go to medical school. And and that this feeling hit me out of nowhere. And it was like, oh, it wasn't out of nowhere. It was like, this is no longer your passion. This is no longer the path you want to go on, because I was sitting there in unbearable physical pain during my health crisis when doctors were telling me they couldn't help me. And I was like, why would I go somewhere that, they're telling me they can't help me? So it was this identity kind of ripped out for me, because I thought pre-medicine was my identity. I'm going to be a doctor was a part of my identity. So I really was doing well in school, also for the motivation of I wanted to get into medical school, and it's very competitive, right? It's a very competitive culture. And it was a very big motivation in doing well. And that was a career trajectory I thought. It wasn't until my life kind of completely crumbled until I started to learn all the things I didn't learn before. I mean, I started to learn how to have a healthy relationship with myself, to learn to listen to my body, to have this spiritual foundation, to having, again, that mind, body, and soul, how to have a clear mind, how to have a healthy body, and how to have such a deep relationship with spirit. It was this, as soon as I learned about it, and I was like, I need to teach this to others. I need to share this, because I didn't know this before. I just felt I needed to share it too. So that's where things started to shift. But that was the trajectory that brought me here.
It does make a lot of sense. And you're actually one of those people that I look mostly towards kind of the whole spirituality sense, but not only because you are like quite advanced in that and you have a lot of experience, but you also come from like this scientific background, and you also did put in the work in like neuroscience, and you did like just having the identity of like, okay, at some point I want to be a doctor. You kind of have this approach and like, okay, let me go after the scientific method and kind of like also understand it, and then kind of realizing that it doesn't apply to like not the scientific method, but like the regular medicine community within America isn't helping everyone. And before we do go into that a little bit deeper, because I'm like really curious to explore that together, is something that you mentioned a little bit before, which I think can be also quite valuable. And I think otherwise we would miss this. And this is the concept of like, okay, learning how to learn. Because before we go into like the whole spirituality and like soul aspect, I think this is where we should probably start with education, because this seems to be one of the obvious things that should be taught in school, but it just isn't. And in university, they say, oh, like you kind of have to learn that for yourself and figure out your own study guide. But like, why? So considering that you kind of developed that a little bit earlier than I did, can you describe like the path on like what you discovered on like learning how to learn, and how that ultimately helped you create your own business and kind of create this whole foundation for you?
So actually, a part of the special education program that I was a part of actually taught you how to learn. And
Ooh, that's
that's when
cool.
yeah. So, I mean, I had resources that people in surrounding towns don't have resources to, because we moved here specifically for the fact that my brother has autism and he needed special education. And so the special education here is beyond what it is in other places completely. So in an advanced sense, I was taught how to learn, and that's when everything shifted because I wasn't just something I figured out. Thank God I was in that special education program because it taught me how to learn. And as soon as I realized it's not about I'm just wrong, it was more of, oh, it's how I learned that I'm just not grasping here. It's not that I don't get it or that I can't do it. It's that I need to find the way that works for me. And it was a process of working with some people, but I was taught it, thankfully, and it really did change my trajectory in my life. I think because I had that special attention, because I had this special program, which I think everybody should have. It shouldn't just be people who, have an IEP or whatever. It should be it should be everyone that is taught how to learn. But I was taught it, and it really did make a huge difference in my education and in my future.
Okay. Oh, that makes a lot of sense because through that you were able to kind of define your own learn style and kind of explore
Mhm.
different ways because after all, like as humans are super individual and kind of I think an issue that is with the current education system that we just have the system and it's kind of like a cookie cutter thing that like either you fit in the system or you don't. And if you don't, most people will just like fall off. And we have the same thing here in Germany where we have basically three different education levels, and the people at the lowest level aren't necessarily dumber than everyone else. They just don't fit into the traditional trajectory where you just have to like memorize random stuff, and they are kind of labeled as not good students
Mhm.
because they don't fit in that system. And having this specialized education, I love how it doesn't really kind of put you at a disadvantage, but actually helps you. And it's not something that people kind of look like frown upon, but it's actually something that just helps you towards developing like all your capacities in both body, mind, and soul.
Absolutely. And I think, like I said, I think everyone should have a chance to have access to these programs or have them integrated into the school system to actually, it's not just about slowing things down. It's about, okay, I didn't just learn, how I didn't just learn here, write an essay about this. It was how do you structure an essay? How do you how do you take what's in your head and put it into words? Because that I had a hard time with from what was in my head to on paper. It didn't connect. I had no idea how to express myself, right? And the different ways that they taught me to bring that expression out, I ended up writing a book. I mean,
Amazing,
when
yeah.
I was in school, I couldn't put what was in my head onto paper, and now I have an entire published book that became number one new release in holistic medicine. Like how do you go from here to here? It's the fact of like everything can be learned. It's
Mm.
the fact that you have to figure out what works for you and individualize it. The problem with the school system is that you're catering to one type of student. You're catering to one format when in reality it's necessary to have that individualizedness in it. And that might be hard to integrate, absolutely hard to implement, but I also think that it will radically change the way that we live our life because it needs to be individual. We don't want to have just everybody coming out the same. Then nothing will actually advance or become different. Or the reasons that we're advancing so much is because of life, because people went off the rails, because, everyone who's been called crazy ended up being, creating the craziest inventions. Why? Because they didn't fit the mold that's been creating the same problems that we already have. So there's this individualizedness that is definitely needed. And in the special education program, they figure out, okay, what exactly is their issue? Okay, how do we help with that individualized issue? and then going into it from there. That's how instead of the whole class, the scores are getting lower. Well, why are each of the kids are having difficulties with different parts? You can't just do one thing that's going to have everybody be raised, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it like does make sense, and I think this also touches the point that the regular education system kind of goes and assumes the best possible situation for the children, and with that we kind of assume that like all of the students have like an amazing family life, they get support by their parents, they
Mm-hmm.
have a quiet environment where they can learn and basically have all of this support, which just isn't the case for most people. And by kind of taking care of all these stress factors and like even the illnesses, and I think this is where you can kind of like touch on a little bit more, because you did have this health crisis, which I assume like made it very difficult to focus on like whatever you were learning, right?
Oof, yeah. So I had my first health crisis in high school, actually. And then because I didn't listen to my body, didn't learn, I didn't know what to do, it continued. Took some pills that suppressed the symptoms, and I didn't end up having the huge health crisis until after college. But the first health crisis and the chronic health condition started in high school. I actually missed more than 30 days in a
Oh,
semester.
damn.
I mean, I was so, and the thing is I was gaslit because there's so much gaslighting around chronic illness, like, oh, you can't really be sick. But I was like, I am sick. Somehow I still got straight A's while missing that much school, which probably is because I had that motivation. I had that why. I had a support system. I didn't have special education in high school. I had left it in middle school. But it was really, really, all those things I learned was really, really helpful. The the health crisis, like I said, I barely know how I kept up my grades because I didn't go to school that often. I was very motivated, but it was difficult. I mean, just I was only doing school at that point. At that point, I had only focused on school because that was all of the energy I had, and then I didn't have time or energy to hang out with my friends. I didn't have energy to go out. I didn't have energy to be in social situations. Yeah, I'm a social butterfly now. I mean, you know me. Like,
Mm.
when we were at the event, but it was a such a it's such a hard thing when you don't have energy and you're in pain. You just can't have a quality of life that's suitable. And so the fact that I could even get my work done and just get whatever I could get also just doesn't it just shows how the education system isn't real, if that makes sense. I wasn't learning anything that was helping me in my life. I was just computing. I was just regurgitating information. Nothing that was actually philosophy that would help me in the resiliency. I think that there's a piece that's missing in the education system. You can get all A's, but you could be completely dumbfounded when life happens. I think this is the number one thing is emotional resiliency, spiritual resiliency, mental resiliency, all of these things school does not teach you. And if I was taught, if I during my health crisis, if I could go to school and learn about how to be healthy, mindfulness and holistic health and all those things, like if I could go to school and learn these things, I could have, there could have been so much gold for me, but there wasn't. I was getting all A's, but I had no energy to actually live my life and to get anything done and to do anything until I finally had found a medication to suppress the symptoms for a while. But it was definitely a struggle.
Yeah, I can see that, like how this can like really make it difficult as a student. And it's not just like the students, right? Because like the teachers suffer as much by like mental health crisis and like stresses and all of that, which is like really makes like not only being a student but also being a teacher extremely difficult. And
Mm.
I'm not sure like how many people are actually like super deep in the whole holistic wellness aspect. And especially schools in America, it seems weird that there isn't more education about this, because I still remember that your attendance on like how many sick days you had. You must have been like had a great school, because in my school, your sick days were directly connected to the grades that you were getting. So even though you may have like had a perfect score, because you were missing like too many days, you were just getting lower grades. So it doesn't make sense for me that this isn't educated. So for those people who are like not at all in the whole holistic aspect of like health and wellness, if we completely start at the beginning, how would you explain that to someone who is just being aware? It's like, oh, maybe like I am like extremely stressed, or maybe there is some like health issue going on. How would you address that?
It really depends on the person, again, the individual niceness. But I would start with first regulating your nervous system, no matter what's happening. No matter if you're having a mental health crisis, no matter if your body is going, bananas because something's really wrong physically, not, even if there's something emotional, if there's stuck emotions in your body and they're being expressed and there's some emotional outbursts or whatever it is, regulating your nervous system first and foremost is going to be where you need to start. So then you can start to look at everything else, because you're going to need to be able to learn how to regulate your nervous system for when you learn emotional resilience, when you learn to have mental resilience, because there's things that start to come up that you need to clear out. That becomes a cleaning at that point, but you can't do any cleaning. You can't do, any deprogramming. You can't do any of the consistent healthy habits such as meditation and exercise and all of these other things if you don't regulate your nervous system first. If you don't take
Just to make sure we're on the same page, with regulating your nervous system, you means like calming yourself to the point where you're no longer in like fight or flight, or you're like stressed about things, but you're actually
yes.
like you feel safe in like the environment that you are.
Yeah, so your body doesn't have the biological alarm system on. So you can feel it in your body. You feel when these things are happening. And some people who are watching this are probably like, I have anxiety. Like, I can't do that. But it is first and foremost about learning to connect to your nervous system. Now, when you're trying to regulate your nervous system, you're going to probably start connecting to your body. And when you connect to your body and you start listening to it, the alarm might be telling you exactly what to do to be able to get you into health. Maybe the alarm needs to be on, right, to get to that place. Most of the time, our alarms are on and they're not supposed to be. That's the pandemic that's happening right now, is stress. That the underlying of all health issues is stress. It's the biological process of inflammation, of all of these things being inflamed, which causes disease and pain chronically, especially. The chronic pain, the chronic illness comes from this underlyingness of our stress hormones and how our body reacts to too long of stress and adrenal fatigue, and all of these things are all around our nervous system. So at first and foremost, regulate nervous system, and also learn to listen to your body, because your body and your intuition, or whatever you want to call it, when you start to listening to the actual, how when you get thirsty, right? That's a sign from your body. But there's so much more that your body's telling you. And it's so slight. But when you learn to listen to it and hear it, you're like, oh, okay, this is what I need to do. Because you start to get the instinct of, oh, I need to go on a walk. I need to do this. I need to move like this. Your body knows a lot more on how to calm you down, on what exactly you need to do. But you just need to learn to listen to it first. So I would definitely start with that, regulating that nervous system and learning to listen to your body, which is pretty much the same thing, because when you're grounded and listening to your body, your nervous system isn't on high alert. So I would start there.
Okay. And I heard a very nice explanation that kind of describes on like how like stress is affecting your body. And
Mm,
the way I heard it described is basically it's as if you like hit the gas and the brakes at the same time. So you're not really moving in any direction, but like you're constantly under this pressure that just puts so much like tear and stress on
mm,
the vehicle, which in that
mm.
metaphor is your body. And
Yeah.
over time, like things will break. And usually they break where like they're the weakest. And kind of listening to your body and seeing like, okay, like first of all, let me calm down. And like only when like you don't hear these tires screeching, then can you be like, oh, actually, like I do feel the pain like in my stomach, for example, and then do
Mhm.
something about this. And you also mentioned like a very nice habit or activity that I think everyone can do, because I think especially in the beginning it can be difficult to really learn how to listen to your body, especially if you haven't done this before. But if you just find a place in nature and just go into nature like without any headphones, in Germany we call this Waldbaden, which basically means taking a bath in a forest. And I
Mhm.
think this makes so much sense because it doesn't like clean us in like a kind of physical hygienic way, but it cleans like all of the stress throughout the day. And it's just, if we look back at all the ancestors, it's very unusual to live in the city, to have all the smog around us, to constantly kind of be afraid of losing our jobs or kind of getting a bad grade or kind of getting screamed at by our superior. This is
Mhm.
all kind of, if that happened to our ancestors, they were in a life or death situation. And by just going into nature where it's peaceful, where it's quiet, where you actually have no like possible way of like feeling endangered. So maybe don't do this in Australia because like animals do try to go in there. But generally, just like going into nature and like finding peace there, I think works for everyone, even if you're not all that deep into the spirituality meditation kind of thing, because I think everyone will benefit by just being in nature and just
Mhm.
taking some time off.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that nature is a huge, huge healer. And I've found, even through some of my clientele, some of them who live in the city, they don't have access to be able to get into nature spaces. And in those times, what the number one thing is to listen to your body is to just sit and intentionally listen to your body. What? It sounds so simple, but when was the last time you sat with your body for 10 minutes and not just in, oh, I'm not going to think any thoughts meditation. It's let me listen to my body. Let me ask, what do you need? When you just simply ask your body, what do you need? And you can start to hear the answers that it calls for. You start to, when you just simply sit and listen. It sounds so simple, but when you're listening to this, have you actually done it? Probably not. Knowing something and embodying it or applying it is so different and actually can create that muscle. When you listen to your body, you just continue to practice and practice and practice, and it becomes louder and louder and louder as you start to practice this.
And I think it's like not only benefiting your health, but it also helps you with kind of like problem solving and creativity, because sometimes we are so caught up in like our day-to-day life and like whatever problem we have in front of us. And I know that myself, like even during school or later during my studies when like programming, sometimes I was just bashing my head against this problem. And
Mm-hmm.
whenever I took some time to step away from that, and just kind
Exactly.
of like ask, like, okay, is this really the smartest way of solving that? Usually I saw something like, oh, like there's actually a door, so I don't have to go through the wall. I can just open
Mm-hmm.
up the door, and this is a much easier path to like the goal that I wanted to achieve. And also
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you even see something that like you didn't even think was like relevant. It's like, oh, like the problem that I've been trying to solve is actually irrelevant because of this other thing that you haven't even thought of.
Like you could be having a huge headache, and that's, you keep thinking about the headache, right? And it's screaming at you. But when you finally sit, you realize, you have a terrible stomach pain. And the pain in your head has been so loud, but there's this ache in your stomach, and there's, some kind of lining rupture or something that, even something serious or not even serious, just inflammation in your stomach or gut. First of all, our stomach and our head, our brains are very
100%.
interconnected. We have neurons in neurotransmitters being made in our gut. So our nut brain axis uh, is very true and tried, and more studies are coming out about it. But it's this listening to your body and really sitting with it, and not just listening to the loudest thing, being like, okay, where do I really need to start scanning my body and looking at each and every cell? Oh, here's the issue. It'll tell you.
And sometimes it will even tell you like, oh, I haven't like drinking like water throughout the whole day, or like, oh, I haven't exercised throughout the whole week, and that's why like I'm feeling so restless, or I'm actually
Mm,
lacking energy, because like it's a bit counterintuitive, but like if you do exercise and you do get some movements, you feel more energized. And it's the
yes.
point where you are like always stagnant and like not moving around. This is when you become even more um like tired, because like
Yeah.
your body doesn't have a reason to kind of get motivated and get moving. And I always like to compare it with like a machine, and like in order to oil the machine it has to run, and if it's like always stagnant, things will become like stale and
Yeah.
ultimately break down over time. So kind of moving and like listening to like the whole system, because I think this is ultimately what like the holistic health aspect means, that the whole body is a system and all things kind of impact one another. And this is also how I believe education can work, if all of the subjects kind of work on top of one
Mm,
another. Because an issue that I'm seeing currently is all of these subjects seem very separate from one another. What you learn in like math and what you learn in English are in no way connected. But in your job, you constantly have to use numbers and kind of like words to like describe certain things. So if you were to make a presentation about something, you always need some form of statistics, but also you need like the literacy to kind of put the
mm,
statistic into words and kind of explaining people that in this whole picture, and telling like, hey, this is the reason why you do this.
yeah.
Similar to our health, like, hey, like you don't feel like this headache because something is wrong with your head. It's actually like the bigger picture on your stomach, that you haven't eaten the wrong things. And the same then again applies to education. It's like you don't learn math to kind of memorize all these formulas. It just teaches you how to solve problems. It teaches you a
Mhm.
way of thinking. And once you do realize that, and if I had realized that before, I would have put way more effort into education, because you were like a great student and like did your homework and kind of like handed all the assignments, getting these A's. And I was like almost the opposite. I was always thinking like, okay, because I didn't understand why we're doing all of these, and I always kind of try to get away with the least amount of work so I can go home, play with my friends, and kind of be outside again, because I felt stuck in there. And
Mm,
it wasn't really like, I just like, why should I learn this? This is in no way connected to what I want to do in the future, even though I had no idea what I wanted in the future, because this also is not taught in school, right?
yeah. Yeah. And we're in a space where even if you were just taught that one thing about listening to your body in one class of yours that's already going, even that if that was the only thing that they did, that could bring such a significant change to the education system. Just if teachers, educators learned about not just their subject, which they're very good at, but the emotional regulation while saying, say there's a math problem. So many kids have math anxiety. I mean, genuine math anxiety. And they get so frustrated that they don't know what it is. And instead of reprimanding the child for learning to study more, teaching them, okay, how about we all take a deep breath? How about we all just start, having visualizations with the numbers and playing with the numbers and bringing them into a mindset of playfulness and fun and creating that environment. Imagine what would school be like if the teachers learned some of these emotional regulation, resilience, and taught that along with the other subjects. Say we can't completely change the education system right here and right now, but rather integrate the things into the subjects that are already there. Math brings anxiety. English, why don't you create more communication? Because communication will be the number one thing that people need to use in their life. How to have, so in English, all right, what would be the words that would make someone feel calm during a confrontation? What would that be like? So putting these seeds of not just these things, I mean, some of the greatest teachers that I ever had, it kind of started the thought of this, but I think this can be so much done more intentionally. English be a place to learn more about communication and having healthy dynamics and relationships to be able to communicate well, because communication, oh boy, is the basis of healthy relationships. Math, help with anxiety, while science, you can learn not just about the anatomy of the body, but how to listen to it. Right? Oh, now this is now I want you to take a moment to listen to it. Like, imagine what the education system would be like if educators right now decided that their classroom was going to be the change. It takes one teacher, it takes one idea, it takes one tiny thing to start to integrate into their classroom to be able to have these kids have these, because kids are like fertile soil. You're planting seeds in them. And imagine the seeds that the blooming gardens that would bloom in these kids' lives if we all just intentionally put seeds in where we're already, have the system. If we can't change the system right now, let's integrate these ideas into the classroom that's already there.
Yeah, and I love these comparison on like how you integrated English and math and all of that. And another one that popped in my head, like we can use history to teach about leadership, because like,
Oof.
okay, how did like all of these like great people in the past kind of lead a country or kind of like brought upon changes, and how did these changes evolve over time? And maybe someone had like really good intentions, but it ended up being like something completely like bad off. So kind of learning about that and with that respect is so crucial. And you also mentioned something that is so powerful that we need to remember over and over again, that it's not the fault of the teachers that they are not doing that, because they were not taught that. The thing that they were taught was just like basic math. And I'm not sure like how deep teachers are taught in pedagogical sciences, but like I do talk here with teachers, and it is honestly quite lacking. And it's also rather late within their like career as a teachers that they are being introduced to students for the first time. And mostly they just like have the same studies as someone who would study like pure math. And like, yes, you do need to understand like how like math works at these highest levels, but I think it's even more important to understand how can we use math to bring that closer to students, how we can inspire them, and how can we kind of use these subjects to also teach them about other areas of life that will require them to just be functional adults. And I think this is ultimately what school is for, right? Prepare the next generation for the future so they can kind of take the lead and solve all these problems in the world, which we are like currently facing. And like, if there's one thing for sure, is we don't we most certainly don't lack problems. Like, we have enough problems. And yeah, it's just enabling the teachers with these lessons, with these teachings, with these examples, I think would make such a big difference on how the students would respond to the whole education as a whole.
And I think it's also important for educators. I mean, they're going to have to take responsibility. Not that it's their fault, but each and every person, we all need to take responsibility for what we have control over. And that's just and you know what? Their job is hard and they're not paid enough, especially in the US. Oh, paid nothing, paid next to nothing, paid a wage that is just absolutely abysmal. Like it's astonishing how little we pay our teachers in the US. And it's still each of our own personal responsibilities. Where can I make this change? Where can I teach? Even if it's just your family, even if it's just the people around you, even if it's just your friends, like when you learn something, it's your responsibility to share it with others, to share it with people, to continue to spread the knowledge so it becomes more, I don't want to say groupthink, but it comes more in the consciousness where it's just it's very much already there and accessible for people to grab, instead of these toxic traits, toxic cultures continuing to be infiltrated into our culture and continuing to create these cycles that just don't serve us, right? So if we learned these incredible ways of living, incredible habits, knowledge is nothing without implementation. And if you don't teach the kids how to implement anything in life, how is the education system really teaching anything?
Yeah, for sure. And like the responsibility part, and I think a lot of people will be like, okay, why should I take the responsibility when I do not get paid enough? And we do have the same problem here in Germany, that not only can the pay be higher, but also we just don't have enough teachers. So not only are you not getting paid to the level that you should be paid, because after all, I think being a teacher is one of the most important things, because like they prepare the future, like they decide the future. But if you do take responsibility and you really like understand, hey, like you influence the future by being the best teacher that you possibly can, you will eventually teach the students that will kind of make the politics on how the teachers are paid, on how the education system will change over time. So if we think in the long term and we as teachers say, okay, we take a responsibility to be the best possible teacher, to prepare our students for the future, then ultimately these students that you are teaching will make up a better future for everyone, including the teachers. And because they had this great, amazing teachers, they'll be like, and maybe they work in politics, like, oh, we need to like really make sure that there are more teachers out there like that take responsibility, that want to really help students like me and like others who want to make a positive change in the world. And as teachers, and you put it so beautifully, you plant these seeds, and eventually by helping others, it will help out yourself in the end. And you just have to kind of broaden your perspective and think in the long term. And like, even if you don't see directly the fruits of your teachings, like someone else will. And ultimately you are helping the whole of humanity. And even if like this is too abstract for you, you're helping like the student in front of you. And I think this is like why people go into teaching, because they want to help the students. They want to inspire these students. And I think they're just missing the tools to kind of make learning more fun, more engaging, and kind of give them the big picture on why they're learning something, because they never experienced something like this before.
Absolutely. And I mean, obviously the teachers themselves are going to have to learn it themselves first to be able to integrate this into the classroom. And again, that takes some responsibility, but sometimes people just don't know. They don't know what this new enhanced life is like. They don't know what holistic health can radically change your health, because in society, this is my whole basis of everything that I do, is when we think about health, we think about not being sick. But on my journey, I found there's a health that we can feel, like I talked about, that vibrancy. And it comes from experience of, this is what this is, right? So there is going to either have to be someone to come in and teach these teachers, to train these teachers, or it's going to have to come in from higher level, or it's just going to have to be teachers seek out this information. They seek out how to create a classroom that creates an environment for kids to not just survive but thrive in life, creating those seeds be planted more. It's going to be a continuous learning. And I think that when you, as a teacher, the best teachers are lifelong learners. And so bringing and driving home this idea that everybody is a learner and everybody's a teacher. Let's be honest. Every person, every conversation, everything you do teaches you something. So allowing teachers to have the shift of mindset of the students are teaching me what they need. All right, how do when you're talking to middle schoolers, let's say, there's a lot of insecurity. There's a lot. Taking that information in, all right, they're teaching me that this is what they need. Okay, let me create structures in this class about, say, give me a subject.
English.
Okay. How, kind words to give to yourself, like how to love yourself. What are affirmations and ways that you can form different sentences and you can create grammatical things with I love myself, comma, or semicolon to like the next, right? So
those would be amazing exercises to do. Like not only because it improves your English, but it also kind of teaches this like at a like subconscious level. It's like,
yes.
Right, like if we just have like these gratitude journals as like a way to like learn English, like not only would this is an amazing exercise, cool, and like through this teachers would also be kind of these role models that the students can look up to, and they actually have someone who's like, like maybe they don't have anyone who like lives this vibrant life, and like the healthiest person just doesn't complain every day, and they never know like what like life can be if you're actually like vibrantly alive, you're excited to get out of bed in the morning. And if they don't have anyone in their life that shows them, like they don't even know that this is a possibility. So as a teacher, even if like you're just teaching science, you can still be a role model and just be that example. It's like, hey, like I may be teaching science, but I can still be a positive example of like just compassionate teacher, and like someone who is healthy and someone who kind of like takes care of like other students and like wants to help them. And like this alone will like then everyone is kind of like in this leadership position, because through that you can just influence so many students, and students are so easily influenceable. And like this can like have the good side as we discussed it, but and I think this is why teachers have such a strong responsibility. Like everything that they kind of like, every outburst, an emotional outburst, has like a tenfold effect on their students. So it's even more important that as a teacher, you're aware of your own mental health, mental wellness, and taking care of your health, and not just like physically, but also mentally. And if you kind of like berate yourself for making a mistake, what do you think your students will do when they make a mistake?
I mean, I still remember when teachers of mine had outbursts, and I was like, "What the heck did I do?" You know,
like this is being like adult. I don't think I want to become that.
There's absolutely a huge responsibility, and there's so much you can do. So much you can do, even if it's the smallest of things, changing the exercises. Yeah, you're going to get a textbook, but you can create examples that are in alignment with creating these environments for these kids. You can create math problems that are funny and but also give those subconscious programming, because everything you do when you're young is being programmed into a child's mind. It's
Yeah, and
all
it's
subliminal.
easier than ever, right? Like you can just ask ChatGPT to like you give it the regular math problems or English prompts and just say, hey, like I also want to raise awareness for kind of depression. So how can we add gratitude within these exercises? And ChatGPT will do that for you. So you just have to come up with the idea. You don't even have to execute on the idea anymore, because now you have this personal assistant who will do everything that you tell them to do, and it will
Yeah.
kind of take your idea and get it to a ready version that you can present to your students within minutes. And like your students are using ChatGPT, like why shouldn't you use that? Kind of like level the playing field and kind of
Absolutely.
use that to your advantage and kind of teach
Absolutely.
about the things. Like they don't need to learn how to like write anymore, even though that is important. What's more important though is that they have positive beliefs about themselves, and this is not something that ChatGPT can do for them. This is only something that you can kind of plant in your students.
And I think that's a huge, huge part that's missing in the education system, but it's something that's implementable right now. Like someone, if they listen to this, could go implement it in their classroom tomorrow. It's not
Yeah.
something that's, oh, well, we need to change the education system. We need to teach about holistic health and all of these things. No, how do we do it right here and right now? Because there is never then, it's always just now. So it's about taking these ideas that, yes, I would love to see a class on holistic health. Health class barely does anything. I mean, it's so controversial about what is taught in health class and this and
We
that.
don't even
But
have
we're
health
miss.
class here.
You don't have health class?
Oh. No.
Wow,
We
wow.
have
Okay,
biology and like but that's it. Like
wow. Well, and I was already like, like
yeah.
it sucks here.
I think
um,
this is like one of the benefits of the American education system, that you are like relatively broad. Like of course, like we just discussed all of these other things that would also benefit from being added. But I think this is your greatest strength in America, that you are quite broad. And the teachers also have a lot of flexibility. While here we go in more depth. Like I do remember that like in all of the science classes, I was ahead of certain things, but there were other subjects that I didn't like even know existed. So
mm,
kind of like, and this is kind of what we do, taking the best part of like everything and learning. And this is kind of the responsibility of all the teachers. Just learn what's out there and kind of adjust. And you don't have to like take up all of the things that we talked here today. Just like use whatever felt right for you,
mm.
because I'm sure there was at least one thing that would make your life and the life of your students at least a little bit better.
I love this so much because it's
So,
so implementable now. It's not
yeah,
something that we
yeah,
have to wait for. It's not a conversation about what's outside. It's how can we make this right here and right now, and that just brings me so much fuel. Keep
yeah.
bringing more of the message.
Amazing. So unfortunately, we are kind of out of time. It was an amazing, like, kind of just chat that we had there. We touched so many subjects. It was like way more than I ever imagined. Before we kind of leave, I wanted to kind of ask or end this with one last question,
Mm,
which is if you had like a magic wand and you can like change one single thing in the education system, like what
mm.
would that be?
Having a class or trainings or integrations on resiliency, whether that's, I think that is the one thing that's needed the most is we need to, life is going to throw you battles, and it's about how you get back up, whether it's a health issue, whether it's financial, um whether it's relationships, because encompasses every.
It does. It includes so many things. So having that would make a huge difference. I agree.
Yeah, I think
Amazing.
just that one class could really radically change the whole education system.
Amazing. thank you so much for coming on here. It was a pleasure. How can people find more about you if they kind of like got a taste and want to like really live a more vibrant life themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me at Cassidy, Cassidy, Amber, Amber, Chapman, Chapman, Cassidy Amber Chapman, either on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. It's also my website. And you can find my book, Vibrancy Codes, A Guide to Vibrant Health and Vitality, on Amazon. And those are the best places to find me.
Amazing. And of course, all of these links will be down in the description, so you can just click on these and find you right there. And yeah, also, by the way, the book is like a #1 bestseller, right? Like you were like in the holistic kind of ranking, like all the way at the top there, right?
Yes, it was number
Amazing.
one new release in both in two categories in both holistic medicine and energy healing.
Amazing. So like I still have to read it. It's on my list. I feel like while traveling, it's difficult to get all of this done, but definitely next time we're gonna like have a chat. We can probably go and dive deeper into that
Dive
book
deeper.
moment. So I'm very excited for that. Right. Yeah. Thanks for being on, and until next time.
Bye.
Bye.